Hi everybody. Today I am going to share with you some tips and tricks when you're starting a page with a gel print that isn't perfect. It isn't the Insta background. Now I'm going to be working in these gel print art journals that I created, and I'll put a link to this video if you want to see how I make these super simple art journals. So let's flip through the gel prints. These are imperfect. We've got a white border, we've got interesting colors, but nothing spectacular, nothing to write home with. It's somewhat lacking. And we all have these gel prints in our stash. Here we have this big wide white area. They just need some love. They need something more. And in this video, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that you can use. Now, if there's a white border, paint it. Go pick a color that is in the background and simply apply paint. You can apply paint with your makeup sponge like I have, and I've applied it to more than one area. Now, I know I'm going to add more layers. So I'm not too worried about it looking like it's odd, because when I'm done, it's all going to come together. That was a mistake. I grabbed the wrong sponge and I put some black on it. So, I'm going to go with the flow, and I'm going to add some contrast. So sometimes a gel print, in order to become a background, needs some contrast. It needs a different color, or it needs black or white or a dark in there. And in this case, I'm putting some black paint through this stencil. This is called Rows of Lines. And I chose this stencil because you have those little circles in the gel print. The gel print gives us the jump start. It's giving us a color scheme potentially. It's giving us some pattern. It's giving us a starting point. It's broken the page. But we have to think of it as simply the first layer. Now right away, with that black contrast on there and that extra patterning, this background has come alive. It's got some life to it now. And that was definitely a step in the right direction. And do you see that purple that I added? It took a back seat. Now, one of the things that I do periodically when I'm working on a background and I'm not sure where I want to go is I will edge it. And 90% of the time I end up edging with black. So I've got black acrylic paint on my makeup sponge, and I'm going around and I'm edging the page. This frames the page. It helps me see and to determine whether I'm done or whether I need to do more. And while I like it where it's at, I'm not sure I'm done at this point. And you don't have to do this all in one session. You can come back to it afterwards and add. Let it sit. But I decide this needs some more color. And one of the great ways of adding color is to smoosh it on. So I'm taking some, this is magenta violet, and I'm diluting it, and this is on a piece of acetate, and I'm smooshing it on there. And again, when I've added that to it, that extra color, it's brought this background to life. And now I picked a color that I know is going to go well with purple. A color across the color wheel would also work. I also know that all my gel prints are made with acrylic paint, so it's permanent. It's not moving. It's not going to reactivate. Now here we have this big white, it's the bottom of a heart from the stencil that I used here. So I want to fill that in. So I grab some deli paper that I have done some stenciling on. And this is going to put some pattern and interest onto the page. Now, someone might ask, like, why would you just not stamp it on? When you use something that's either on tissue paper or on napkin or deli papers, you can determine exactly where it's going to go and how much of it. So you have a little bit more control in this application than when I was stamping. So that might be a reason for doing it. Plus, I have it in my stash. I need to use it. It's on deli paper. This deli paper is a little tough to stick down. I prefer my designer papers on either tissue paper or on the white plies of napkins to deli paper. But this one's been sticking around for a while, so I've got to use it. Now, because I'm adding another layer of paper, it's also going to add subtle texture to my background. I'm gluing everything down with either fluid matte medium or my gel matte medium. Now this is adding that all-important contrast to my background, as well as pattern. Another great reason to use your designer designer tissue papers or the like is this is something you can take on a holiday very easily. You're not taking all your paints and stamps and everything, and so it allows you to continue to create when you don't have everything at your disposal. So now that this is all dry, I'm going to take some white gesso and I'm going to go over top and break up some of that background. Remember, it's just the start. Now I'm adding some color, and I'm adding Naples yellow, and I grabbed the magenta violet that I had before, but it's too purple. It doesn't go well, so I'm wiping it off, and I can do that because everything's permanent underneath. And then I grab either alizarin crimson or cadmium red, and that is the right color. So I'm adding color. So you can always beef up the color of a gel print or add color to a gel print. And mixing it with the gesso also softens it up, as you can see here. Because I'm putting paint on now, it's pushing back that tissue paper patterning, making it less upfront. I don't want that to be the first thing you see. Now I'm going to put this tulip hexagon stencil, and I'm removing the paint that is still wet through the stencil. This is giving a patterning and some texture to the background. I absolutely love this technique. And because it's acrylic paint in the gel prints, it will come off fairly easily. So now I'm going to take the cadmium red and I'm going to do straight up stenciling on top. So I have the patterning from this tulip hexagon stencil from removing paint, and now I'm just going to stencil with it. And it's going to give kind of a positive, negative effect. That's going to add a lot of interest to your background. Use the same stencil, two different colors, or two different techniques. And I just love, hopefully you can see how this has really, from what it started with. But again, we got the color scheme from our gel print, and we got some of the patterning. It was very floral noted, so I kind of stuck with it. And since I think I may be done, I'm going to edge the page with black. Another reason I typically go with black is most of the time I add a sentiment, and most of the time that sentiment is in black ink. So You want to have more black on the page so everything works together. And hopefully you can see that even edging it just makes it look that much more finished. I've created a playlist using gel prints. And I think I'm going to call it Using Gel Prints 2022, because I think we all need to use our stash of gel prints. So I'm flipping through and I'm looking at those pages and I'm thinking, am I done? Now here there's a lot of white space, too much white space at all, but I grab this dot stamp and I add dots. And the reason for that is there are dots in that gel print that I think I put shelf liner through the stencil. And then I grab this gel print collage paper. It has big wreath stenciling on it, and it's green and blue, so it's matching the color scheme of that. Now what these collage papers, I'm rip a strip and just layering them up, what it's doing is giving weight to this page. We added contrast with the black stamping, and now I'm playing around with these collage papers to give weight to this page. And I spend a lot of time playing around with where I want these to go. So it's giving weight, it's giving that color. It's going to give me something to put my focal image on. And the layering of it is also giving me texture. And when you want a page, you want texture, physical or visual, or both. You want pattern, and you want color. So you just keep playing with it until you find what you like. And right is where you decide it is. Now the reason I'm struggling so much with this one is because this isn't something I normally do. This is different for me. And when something's new, we tend to struggle. It doesn't go as easy as when you have developed muscle memory for it and it becomes very normal for you. Now at this point, I really have no idea at all what I'm doing in the way of focal image for these pages. I am focused on simply doing the backgrounds. I will be finishing these pages, and that part of the video will be sped up quite a bit because that's not the focus of this video, but I did want to finish it off for everybody. So the gel print in the background, we get the white space. It gave us the color scheme. And it is giving some movement and patterning in the background. Now when I'm doing this, I am reminded of Eric Carle. I am a retired elementary school teacher, and I always did an author illustrator study, and I love the art of Eric Carle. And this reminds me of that, and I would really like to do more art and collage because he uses a lot of collage papers to make all his pictures, his illustrations in his books. So this one's very reminiscent of that. So now that all this page is done, And I'm thinking it's a good place to stop. I'm not sure I'm done. I'm going to, of course, edge the page. You've seen me doing this all the time. Now I'm doing all the backgrounds here in one session. You could do each of these pages separately. In fact, you may not be even doing a whole journal. You may be just doing one page with starting by gluing down a gel print and then using that as your jumping off point. So I'm flipping through and looking at each one and thinking to myself, what can I add? Do I need to add anything? Is this done? How will I put, I'm thinking focal images. Now with this one, we have some white splotches. It's very uneven. I'm adding some color. And this time, instead of adding with acrylic paint, which I could have, I'm using my Inktense blocks. Now Inktense blocks are ink, but they act like watercolor. Unlike watercolor, they are permanent when they're dry and fully activated. Here I'm adding a pop of color to it. And there is kind of that orange-yellow color was hinted at in the gel print. So that guided my selection. So now I want to add some patterning and some contrast. I want to add some black to the background, and I grab this number stamp, and I will link that and the stencils in the description box below in the various affiliate places that I have. So instead of putting the stamp on a block, I'm just going to bend it, press it into the archival ink, which is permanent, and stamp on it. I'm not looking to get a perfect stamp. I want patterning, texture, interest into my background. And again, as soon as I put that black on, I'm hoping that you can see the energy that it gives the page. And then I think, hey, I think I'm going to add a little bit to this page as well. This is subdued colors. It's kind of reminiscent vintage, and I'm thinking this stamp will work well on here. So I'm pressing different parts of it, getting a few little more interesting marks, and adding to the overall vintage-like quality of this page. I'm thinking, do I need to add more of that to it? And instead of grabbing the numbers stamp, I decide I'm going to use this dot stamp. This is one of my favorite stamps. And I'm having on several of these pages, because this is a journal, I want it to work together. Every page is a different color scheme. But if I have some things that are the same, it's going to work well as a separate journal. And now I'm edging. And again, instantly it starts framing it. It makes it, turns this into a more finished looking page. If you hit the top right hand corner where the eye is, I will link the video where I make this art journal out of the gel prints. And I promise you, it is super simple. No stitching, no real measuring. Any size paper will work. And I flip through. And I'm asking myself, am I done? And I'm looking for inspiration for what kind of focal image I can put. So this one, this gel print was created using cardboard on my gel plate, and I'm going to put blue across the top. Now, this is my least favorite of my gel prints. I think I could have done better, and since I have this gel print in another book, I will do better. But I thought, I'm going to share with you. I broke this up with blue down the middle. I should have put more. I don't think I built enough interest in this background. So I broke it up. I should have added some white gesso in there. I should have gone with this stencil with either white or black. You can't win them all. But I do grab the Garden Gate stencil, and where I put blue down the middle, that's going to let this stenciling that I'm going to be doing with white show up more. And that's a good thing. I also do a swoop with this Garden Gate stencil, so it's giving motion to the page. So it looks like the flowers are sliding across the page, and I love that. It's not quite opaque enough, so I'm coming back, putting the stencil back in place and adding another layer of paint. I think what's lacking on this page is contrast. So now we are going to finish off these pages, and I chose to pick a theme. I love magnolias, so I have lots of free printable clip art magnolias, and I printed out a bunch of them, and I fussy cut around them, and then I'm combining them. Now, if you don't have free printables, you can use stamps. This is a great size. This journal is about 5 by 7, this page. You can mix and match. Here I wanted something a bit bolder and bigger on the page, so I chose to use bigger ones against that collaged background. And I love how this page turned out, even though I was really uncertain about it. This one, I made these magnolias swoop across the page, going in the opposite direction of the stenciling I did. So every part of it, even though they're all magnolias, so it's a theme, every part is going to be somewhat different. I use 2 flowers or 3 flowers or 1. And I've glued those down with either gel medium or fluid matte medium. Typically, when it's a busier background, I use bigger focal images. Like here we have 2, but it's a beautiful background. And here, again, it's a fairly busy background. It kind of looks like there's flowers in the background. And remember, that stenciling was maidenhair fern, so really there were. I elongated the stem to fit my composition, and I'm just using some white paint or white gesso to gesso it out. And then I'm painting on top of these magnolias. Now this is just printed on copy paper and glued down with gel medium, so it is a non-porous surface. And now I'm adding some white paint or white gesso on top. This is adding texture to it. It's making this look like it's painted, not just paper glued on. But I'm not being overly careful here at all. Then I went through my sentiment packs and I pulled out a bunch of sentiments from my Through the Garden Gate sentiment pack. And you can go and check that out. It's at Ninny's Napkins, available for purchase. And again, with the sentiments, I picked a different sentiment for each one, but it's a common theme. That was my choice. Every page could have been different and unique. I grab my black Posca pen and I'm outlining the sentiment. Helps it stand out from the page. And I'm adding a few black lines in details on my focal image. Now, what would you do with this? This can be like a greeting card. It can be a gift to someone. It's a mini art journal. And the joy about these ones, these mini art journals, is they're done fairly quickly. You don't have to wait a year to get it done. Now I'm going to shade around these white printables. And the reason it's flowing like watercolor is because there is a layer of gel medium on top, which has turned it into a non-porous surface. And that's giving it that ability to flow and look a little bit like watercolor. This, I think, really bumps up the page. And if you compare the one that I've done to the one that I haven't done, I hope you can see that. This technique is called floating acrylic. If you are in my YouTube channel, do a search and either type in shading in the search bar or floating acrylic, and you will find that video where I teach this technique. It's a great one to use. You'll be very happy you have it because you'll use it on all your pages. And then I'm using that same technique to further edge around the page. And you can see how the black stamping in the background adds to it and works with everything on that page. The focal image, the shading on the focal image, the black in the sentiments. And then I put a magnolia on the cover and I'm shading it exactly the same. You can use magazine cutouts. I think I'll do the next journal and I'm going to use all magazines. If that's something you'd like to see, let me know in the comments section below. I decide that I want to add some splatter. So on the backgrounds that are blue or purple, I'm splattering with gold because it's going to show up. Now, after you splatter, you got to take time to dry in between. And of course, I've cut that out because you don't need to watch paint dry. And these ones I'm splattering with black because that will show up. Although gold would have as well. I just wanted some differentiation between the two. And this time I am going to make you watch it dry. So here is the finished journal. Happiness blooms from within. Grow with love. Bloom, a beautiful process of becoming. Which page is your favorite? Let your heart blossom. Everything blooms in its own time. Thank you so much for watching me. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. Until next time, go get creative.